welcome to Chaos in the Lobby. Today, my guest is Felipe, aka Harvester, who is, of course, the creator of Kerbal Space Program, one of the highest rated games on Steam of all time with an astonishing 95% overall positive rating, something that very few games have managed to accomplish. He now has a new game out called KitHack, where you build, fly, drive, and sail your own model planes, cars, and ships, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in here in a moment. Finally, he has even more recently joined Rocketworks to create Kitten Spage Agency, which is the spiritual successor to Kerbal's Space Program, which he himself created. So, Harvester, welcome and thank you.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's surreal. Like to hear you say all of those things. Um, yeah, it's just it's insane. So then, yeah, I left around 2016. Everybody else also left. They all left together in the same day. Um, and it didn't make like huge news. I don't know really why. But I mean, it made some news. If you look for it, you can see like 8 developers leaving at the same day from Squad. And from what I heard, like much later, that was the determining moment that made somebody at Take-Two say, "Oh, this might be a good time to get the IP because they don't have a developer team anymore."
And they'd have to restaff and retrain and
Yeah.
yeah.
So they saw their opportunity to go in and pick it up. I think that's how it happened. Everything that I know about post, I'd say post KSP era KSP or well, post me KSP after I left is really just from stuff that I was able to piece together because I was watching it from the outside and I had no internal like information anymore other than like talking to the other guys who stayed for a while longer and they maybe talked to somebody and would tell me like what they knew and
I'm
I
sure that
was
was a
just
surreal feeling. Yeah.
yeah, it was really, really weird. And and really like, but one of the really weird things was that like I walked out with this feeling of like that I was gonna be persecuted for it, like that there was gonna be some retaliation even for leaving.
Really?
Um, yeah, and I thought that I was being paranoid. I thought like, oh, I'm nuts. Like I can just blow any situation out of proportion on my own because of my own way, I guess. But then I
I
learned
do
that
the
like
same thing.
other people felt the same way.
Hmm.
Like as I was talking to the other guys, they said like it's not normal for you to feel like a surge of adrenaline when you see the phone ring and it's one of the bosses. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't normally happen. I was like, it doesn't? Huh.
Hmm.
Like so it's not just me then that feels that. Like it's not just like social anxiety or anything. Like you also like feel afraid of them. Like yeah, like they all did. And it just got like worse and worse with that to the point where it got like really impossible. And
So yeah, what else can you do besides leave? You know?
right, yeah,
Yeah.
it was a very like toxic place to work at that point. Even though we had this thing that was magical and it was just
I think that's the
dreadful. It
right
was
word for it. It really it was magic. I mean, I would say that it went as far as to kind of affect and influence almost an entire generation of gamers. I mean, it's pretty rare that you talk to somebody who, plays more than just Call of Duty who has never heard of Kerbal Space Program.
wow.
So
That's still surreal to me. Like that doesn't um
I think it's true though. I do. And of course now your new game is out, KitHack, which saw its full
yeah.
release just I think in August of 2024.
Yeah, we released it out of early access August last year. And yeah, it's been out. It's been going all right, I guess. Uh, yeah, and I mean, it was a really long journey with that. That was this whole other story. If you have another hour and a half,
Yes.
I can like that was after I left Squad. I set up my own studio, Floating Origin Interactive, and I started off making that I wanted to make this game after KSP, and I set off to do it, and I was working on it for a while until I heard from one other developer who had worked with us at Squad. He was an outside contractor, so he reached out to me and he said like, "Hey, I know a bunch of people here in LA. We can like start pitching the project to investors and get funding to start a bigger project, like a spiritual successor to KSP or something." So, well, I've got my own project here, like, and he said like, "Well, if you turn that project around so that it becomes a space game, I can like get funding because there's going to be interest. I was like, well, okay, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
And so then like that was just as we were going into 2017, and the rest of that year I spent like going from investor meeting to investor meeting, pitching this idea for a game that like started off as a much more original thing and ended up becoming just saying a spiritual successor to KSP, because we were like iterating on the on the project pitch, um, like every time we had a new meeting, and by the end we were just pitching to do KSP again,
Yeah.
and getting nowhere effectively. I found that year that there's one thing that I dislike even more than marketing, and that's pitching the game to investors. Like,
I
holy, it was brutal. That was absolutely horrible an
Yeah,
experience.
that's kind of the other side of gaming. You talk about
Yeah,
the people who made Kerbal Space Program and did it for the love of it, and then you turn around and now you're talking to people who are only interested in how much can I
yeah,
make? Yeah.
yeah.
Which
And worst of all, it was getting nowhere because like we I had this whole concept, but really like there was no team structure anymore. And it was just me and this other guy who had a couple of other people with him, and I was the only effectively like the only developer on
yeah.
that team. So it was gonna be a team of me as sole developer plus three other bosses.
So you're also
So
kind of playing the role of like educator, kind of like explaining how these things will work, how long will it take? I'm sure that was a whole other
yeah,
burden.
yeah. So that
Yeah.
was it was a pretty rough year. And it got to a point where I was so desperate by the end that I thought like, you know what, I'm just gonna start a project on my own, that I feel I can do like myself alone and not rely on anybody else because this whole thing of waiting for other people isn't going anywhere. And I've already like burned through most of my um like little rainy day fund that I put together from KSP.
Yeah.
Um, and I already burned through like a lot of that just waiting to get something going, and I have nothing to show for it. So I started a project for what was supposed to have been a very unambitious, small, and simple little VR simulator for radio control models. Um, and well, it was supposed to have been like an easygoing like 6 month project or something, and it turned into 8 years.
Wow.
Went through two publishers, released on Steam three times, and changed names twice. It was a really, really long project,
But
and it turned out to
it's a
be.
lot of fun. I've played KitHack, and if for those who don't know, if you enjoyed the space planes and rover building and Kerbal Space Program, and you want to try and build some planes, cars, boats with some I would say light combat mechanics. Uh,
Yeah, there is combat, like there's
yeah,
dog fighting, and there's
yeah.
anti-air weaponry and stuff.
But I
Um,
can't recommend KitHack enough. I think if you enjoyed Kerbal Space Program, you're definitely gonna like KitHack.
oh, thanks, thanks. It's a game that I also like. Kind of had to come out of me at some point
Yeah,
because it's even before KSP, before the original Kerbal origin story, the whole like little tinfoil men
yeah.
and model rockets and stuff. Like even before that, I already used to make like balsa wood models of airplanes and stuff, and I've always been all about airplanes and things that fly and or make noise. And I I couldn't not make that game at some point or another. A game about
Yeah.
like models that you make yourself and then send out to varying degrees of success and controllability. So KitHack was a lot of that, and it was also like a lot of being able to like having the chance to do over a bunch of stuff that we did in KSP. Now with the added benefit of more or less knowing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because with KSP, like it was all this kind of do or die situation where like you have 20 days to put together this like something like docking in a game that didn't have that. And like, how do we even do that? It took me a really long time to figure out like a way to implement docking in KSP that would actually work across all situations.
Yeah.
And, even when it did, when I implemented it, like there were so many new bugs to work through
Oh, I can't
because
imagine. Yeah.
like everything broke because everything else was just held together by good duct tape and good wishes, really. Like it was all made to like placeholder grade quality because it just needed to get done so we could move on to the next thing because everything was rushed. And
Yeah.
then with KitHack, it was very much the opposite. In a lot of cases, I got to do like tooling and like over engineer a bunch of stuff. And it was very enjoyable. And I think I learned like what the other extreme of that spectrum is. It's absolutely possible to over engineer a bunch of stuff. And then not actually need to use the thing you spent so long making more than like a couple of times. Um,
I did
so,
notice the game KitHack really expands on the procedural parts.
oh
There
yeah,
was a little bit
yeah.
of that in Kerbal Space Program, but KitHack really
A
takes it to
little
another
bit.
level.
Yeah, with KSP we had the procedural fairings and they
Yeah.
came in like pretty late in the game. It was something that we had pretty much everything. It was one of the last features I added was the procedural fairings. And it was a lot of fun to do. Like procedural stuff is always a lot of fun to work on. I'll take that any day over like doing UI work.
Yeah. And so
UI
now, of
is
course, you're working. I'm
bane.
sorry, go ahead.
I know, I was just saying UI work is the bane of my existence.
Oh,
Uh,
but of
yeah,
course, now you're working on Kitten Space Agency. And so
yeah.
those procedural parts that we saw in KitHack, is that something that we could expect to see
Well,
brought over?
maybe. We'll see, I guess, because like I'm on as a consultant in
Okay.
KSA. So they hired me as like I guess teller of horror stories and cautionary tales.
Which is
And
a really necessary role, though.
and I mean, yeah, I think it was like I was just really happy to be included this time. I don't like that's something else that I don't really know to how to explain the whole deal with like why uh all through KSP2 like they chose to not reach out to the original developers.
Right.
Not just me, but none of the original team also who had also left Squad. We were all outside of Squad and detached already by then. And
Yeah. So
I
when you
mean,
first heard about Kerbal Space Program
yeah,
2, did you hear about it like the rest of us, or had you managed,
yeah.
had someone kind
I
of
saw the video. I saw news
really?
about it on the gaming news sites, and I saw the trailer. Like just around, it was when the trailer came out.
Yeah.
That's when I heard of it, and I was pretty shocked because I didn't know that they had even bought it.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't hear about any of that. I didn't. Uh, I wasn't even informed, let alone involved in that. And yeah, but then like I actually like reached out to Take Two. This is something that I was um I saw like when you were talking to Nate last week and you asked him about that. I actually left a comment on that video
Oh, did
trying
you?
to tell my side, but I mean comments they have very limited reach, but I I actually wanted to jump in right then and say like, hey, from my side, what happened was around like when was it 2019 that the trailer came out? I reached out to whoever I could find at Take Two to talk about it and say like, "Hey, I'm the original creator of KSP. I'm not at Squad. I haven't been for several years now, and now I'm seeing that you're working on KSP2. Like, uh, I want to talk about that. Like, somebody please like talk to me about
Yeah.
it."
Why haven't you called me? Like,
Yeah,
it seems
and
like the natural first step would be, well, hey, what's he up to? Let's call him
I
and
would have thought like they
yeah,
probably must want to talk to me, given that like it was my idea
yeah.
and I made the first one. So like, and I was able to get in touch with at least one of them, one person over there who said that he was involved with the IP buyout. Um,
Okay.
and I just, I guess, stated my case there. Said like, hey, I never actually wanted to leave. I kind of was forced out in a way, as was everybody else. And like, I don't know how, but like, I would like to be involved in this. Like,
Yeah.
let's come up with some way where I could like be involved in KSP2. And I got the usual, like by then I was already well versed in how these types of conversations end. The usual, like, oh yeah, we'll look into it and we'll call you back in around 2 weeks. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was the last I ever heard.
Really.
Yeah, they
I
never reached out again.
I
And
still find
like,
that shocking that
to me, that's the biggest unanswered question I have, like for I think anything in my life, is why? Like, what
Yeah.
motivated them to not want to reach out? So, like, either like they didn't know and didn't, or and felt that they didn't need to reach out to anybody. Maybe they got like misinformed about how much of the original team was still at Squad when they sold the IP. It's
Yeah,
not
because of course DLCs were
impossible.
still coming out at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because maybe they said something like, "No, yeah, we still have the full development team," when they didn't.
maybe.
Um, maybe, although unlikely.
Because I had heard
Um,
rumors that there was like I mentioned with in the interview with Nate, that there was almost like a firewall that they weren't supposed to talk to the
right.
KSP1 developers. I don't know how
That's
true
what I
that is,
heard
or
too,
yeah,
that there was this kind of law that
yeah.
was laid out like that of no contact. And I can't really explain that, um, especially towards me or the others of the team who had left earlier, because we weren't even associated with Squad anymore. So I don't know if we got lumped in with uh, like anybody from KSP, period, and that includes whoever touched it in the past. I don't know. Or
I'd
if
also heard that they
somebody
were
was actively there, like trying to like shut down any attempts to communicate. I don't know. And all I can do is speculate and have these wild, kind of paranoid scenarios play out in my head of like
right.
what must have been happening that as the project was like getting delayed and having technical issues and a bunch of having to sort through all of these technical challenges and stuff, like they must have wanted to reach out at some level. Like some developer must have at some point
Somebody on the
said
team.
like
Yeah,
the guy who wrote this code probably knows more about this than like us who are trying to make sense of it now. Like,
because
but
that's I heard that they were also using the KSP1 as a foundation
that's what
for
shocked me the
KSP2.
most. Like up for the first years, I was thinking like, well, they're rebuilding it from scratch. They don't need any of us because they're making their own. So the only thing they have in common is the face of the characters and the name. But then only much later did I learn that that wasn't the case at all. That they were actually like expanding on the KSP1 foundation, which to me sounded like very ill-advised, let's say.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have suggested doing that. I would have definitely suggested starting again
yeah,
with a more solid foundation because that's really the main thing that like limited development of KSP1 to going even further was that the foundation wasn't there for it. We didn't really have um, a solid enough thing to make it any bigger than it was. It was already like pushing the limits
yeah.
of what we could do.
And what, yeah, and the tools that you had. I
Yeah.
mean, Unity was very limited at the
And
time for what you're
yeah,
trying to
and when
do.
they came out saying like this one is going to have multiplayer and colonies and multiple star systems and all of those other things, I was like, well, they clearly have to be rebuilding it, right? Because how could you say you were going to do all of these things and not do that? And so it was just all very shocking
Yeah,
later to learn like how it actually was. Um, and I don't know, like these days, I don't know if if I got off like lucky or not to not have been in contact because the truth is that like seeing how it went and like assuming that I was somehow part of that, like it doesn't feel like I would have been able to do anything to avoid how it ended up
yeah,
because it feels like the all of the big decisions that pushed the game towards the situations that were really like treacherous and caused the biggest problems were coming up from a level where I wouldn't have had any control over.
yeah,
So I don't know. Like when they said no, we're just gonna like uh, expand on KSP1, I would have been like completely against it, and but I would have at most been able to whine as they did it anyway. Probably I don't
yeah.
know. Um.
But
So
it's
yeah,
almost
it
like you're
was
having kind of a homecoming now. Working on
with
another
KSP. Yeah, it's
yeah.
hard to Yeah, sorry, I jump at responding, but yeah,
Oh, no worries. No.
it's hard to put into words how like what exactly KSA means to me now
Yeah,
because it's like it's a like I don't know like a converging of paths and of timelines that feels like a lot of big, like dramatic narrative arcs are closing in on KSA being um like the I don't know the like this kind of magical outcome of something like that. There's a lot of like there's a lot about it that feels like there's some poetic justice about it
Yeah.
after everything that happened. I was actually just a few months before Dean reached out to me about KSA. I was getting ready myself to announce a project of a KSP successor, seeing how KSP2 was it had already launched and it was coming out to be a disastrous um,
Yeah.
thing. And we were seeing like Private Division getting shut down and all of like the writing was on the wall already, and we were all seeing that. And I was thinking like it feels like there's a big vacuum now, and I could like announce a successor project of my own now that even now that KitHack is also winding down. We
Yeah.
were just getting out of the scheduled development period that we had signed with the publisher and all. And I was starting to think about like, okay, let's think about a new game set in like a Kerbal-like game in space. And I was actually like seriously considering that. And Dean reached out to me and said, "Hey, you know what? We're making a new game that's going to be a KSP successor."
Did you
And
have
I
a
didn't.
name for the one that you were planning to announce yet? Or
I I had a working title for it. It was called. I was just calling it After Space.
After Space?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and it was a game about like starting a new well, space agency, I guess, in a solar system, and there's like um this whole situation where you have an endless supply of willing victims slash um, astronauts um, that care more about going to space than about their own safety. So, which is really just the basic premise of
Yeah.
the whole thing. And I was already like, I was thinking about it a lot and starting to get ready to move forward with it when Dean reached out and said, oh, "Hey, we're doing the same thing." And but he was much further along already, and he had a much bigger team with him doing that.
Yeah.
The main thing that was kind of really difficult with Balsa than KitHack was that even though it went on for 8 years and it did just well enough that I could keep going with it with for as long as we did. It was never successful enough that we could grow the team and have more people. So the studio was never more than just me and one other guy. And right now it is still me and Jacob who works with me since KitHack. Uh, and but so yeah, so Dean's reached out to me and said, like, we're working on this other game that's going to be a successor to KSP. Turns out they had pitched to be the developer for KSP2.
Yeah, I had
Uh,
heard that. Yeah.
yeah, and they got passed because from what Dean tells me, their argument was that their pitch was too technical and didn't have enough like
Shiny
visuals.
trailers. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so the more I look back on all of that, the less I feel um injustice from having been left out. Or I guess it's just I don't know. It's my little
Yeah.
consolation, I guess, in a way, because I do feel that I wouldn't have been able to do anything to like turn like to change course on what happened. Um, it feels like it was kind of like a perfect storm of the wrong decisions and the wrong timelines, um, and then the way they released the game was also like very incompatible, I think, with the game that with KSP and how that came to be
Yeah.
because they put out this game in early access for full price. Um,
That was the thing that I think really upset a lot of people was the full price. Like if it had been
yeah,
$10, maybe.
because that was, I think, what my argument with early access was really that like you buy the game and you need to be aware that you're buying it at face value because for all you know, there won't be another update.
Yeah.
But because of that, you're getting it at a discount. Like that's the deal with early access. At least in my head, that's how it's always been. So we would increase the price of KSP incrementally as we felt that like we look back on everything that we had done over the last period or so, and thinking like, well, maybe the game is worth a little more now, and increase it by a couple of bucks every now and then. Um, if you release it by a lot, like with a very high cost, like like
That's
that's
almost a full
not
AAA.
compatible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was released at like almost full AAA prices. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was, and from what I heard, from like just uh from the rumor mill, I guess I heard that like that was also like a decision that came up from uh high up enough that nobody had any control over that. So I wouldn't have been able to change that either. I would have just been there um to have been the face of
Yeah.
that decision probably, and taken the brunt of it,
Yeah. And we've seen,
which
obviously Nate gets blamed for a lot of things that I personally don't
yeah.
think he had any control over.
No,
Uh,
yeah, I think that like Nate, I actually never had a very long conversation with him. Like we've had a short chat
yeah.
every now and then, but I just I feel bad because like I can imagine what it's like to be in that situation where you're like
Yeah.
um bearing the brunt of the accountability for everything without actually having like the means to do very much about it. And it was something that, like, for me, at least in KSP, I used to feel um, a very similar thing a lot of the time where I was never like officially made team leader of KSP at squad. They were
Really.
very determined to keep me in the role of just another employee. So um, even back then, I remember that I was like to the community, they would see me as the lead developer, but internally, I didn't have the authority to decide like this guy isn't working out, like he's like he's not working out in the team, or we need to hire
Really.
somebody else. I didn't have that authority in
So you
KSP.
couldn't control
I
hiring,
couldn't,
firing. I mean, more than
not at all,
suggesting.
more than suggesting. Yeah. Or
Wow.
setting up a row and
Yeah.
just making it
Mutinying. Yeah.
impossible to do anything else. And that was really like we had a few cases of that, like in KSP. Thankfully, not very many, but a few cases where like somebody would join the team and they were like very difficult to work with, and they were like causing like
Yeah.
rocking the boat in the wrong ways, and like it just wasn't working out, and I couldn't actually stop it because I wasn't like I didn't have the authority. I used to say that I had all of the responsibility but none of the authority. And I can only imagine that for Nate, it must have been 100 times worse because he was pretty much in that situation too. But by then, KSP had already snowballed into something 10 times the size of what I remember it to be.
But that's so
Um,
interesting because I mean, at the time when it first came out, I mean, I didn't hadn't really looked into the origins of the game too much. I was just enjoying playing it and seeing the new iterations come out. Uh, but I had heard, Harvester, he made the game. I thought at the time, just without looking into it at all, that Squad was your company, and that's just, you know. So I can see how
yeah,
like you did have, in a way, the responsibility. People, I think, looked and
yeah.
saw this is
And I
his
mean,
game. Yeah.
it was my game, so I never like resented having the responsibility for it. I
Right.
just wished that I was given the tools to go with that responsibility and saying like, well, you're now like heading this project, so we need to make you the head of this department or
Yeah.
something, and like give you like the agency, I guess, to be able to do things that anybody would expect like a project lead to be able to do. And I never had that. In fact, I I used to think that I was just a very weak like communicator, that I had to like, I don't know, make the supreme effort to get my ideas through, that I was just really bad at communicating or something. Because people didn't really like um accept like the ideas that I was coming up with a lot of the time for KSP. And I would get into a lot of pointless arguments sometimes, thinking like why is it that like my ideas don't carry across like that? Like I'm supposed to be leading this team in this project, right? And only
Yeah.
much later did I learn that like I on hiring, they were like introducing the team and making it a point to say like, this is Felipe, he came up with the project, but he's just another employee, like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and like only much later did I learn that. And I used to think it was just me like being really bad at communicating.
But they were actively undermining you.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Wow.
was yeah, at Squad it was kind of like that. Like in later years. Uh, it didn't used to be like that at the beginning. Like it just kind of gradually morphed into that. Um, yeah, I don't know why, but it was just very
I mean,
bad.
it's really shocking to hear that, honestly. I mean, I just can't imagine
And
why they would want to undermine you, why they wouldn't try and, give you the tools. Clearly you've had this success. Why wouldn't they want to expand upon it, especially if they're the
I
ones reaping the majority of the financial benefit?
right, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know either. I can't explain it. It's one of the big unsolved mysteries for me. Um, and yeah, and the biggest like loss of all that was that inevitably it came to what it would have come to, which is that they had to sell it out. They never made another Kerbal game, and it could have been so much better. It could have been so much more fun. We would have had a big studio,
Yeah.
everybody working happily in a game that is magical and is loved by everybody. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is like not to sound like that I was I swear, like hashtag not sponsored. Like this is what it feels like now with KSA. It feels like a lot of that is coming back
That
because
magic of, yeah.
that magic, that like true like indie feeling of like this is just like I mean this is the thing. Like it's Dean's studio, right?
Yeah.
So if he says so, like that's it. Like that's where the buck stops.
Yeah.
There's nobody else. Like there's no like higher level like corporate stakeholders that aren't involved but make decisions for some reason. There's no impossible, immovable deadlines that come from the marketing department that nobody knows why are set in stone.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, even with KitHack, like we had to deal with that kind of thing. The moment marketing gets involved, there is an immovable deadline all of a sudden that
Yeah.
cannot be moved. It's just part of how it works, I guess. And like there was still like a lot of this kind of like I corporate decision making that was like thankfully like pretty light as far as it goes. I think for me in KitHack like was um I got like I was very fortunate probably considering like other stories that I've heard, especially looking back at what was happening with KSP2 at the time. But still like it wasn't completely like frictionless to the point of saying like we should do it this way and and it happens, right? Like for instance, I most of the time in KitHack I was a lot of the time I made a big push to like release a demo version of the game first, um, so that people wouldn't have to like put money up front to even discover if they liked the game or not.
Which
And
really helps building trust in the community and,
yeah, and I
yeah.
mean, like for me, like the most important thing to me in uh, when I look back at the games is seeing their Steam rating. Like for me, the game lives and dies by that Steam rating,
Yeah.
which is like I mean, objectively very true for most
There's a
games
lot of
these days.
truth in that. Yeah.
And I've always considered myself like very like extremely blessed that KSP is 98% rated. That's
Yeah.
insane and impossible these days. But
Yeah, very few games have managed to
and
actually
with KitHack, it
maintain
was
that. Yeah.
a really big battle, I guess, to like keep that Steam rating as high as we could. And it didn't help that I didn't get to release the demo before we released the game because I always argued that like if you get the demo and you play that for free, if you were going to be disappointed by it and it's not your kind of game, it didn't cost you anything to learn that. You can just not buy it now.
Yeah.
But I they didn't let me work on the demo before the release. We got pushed into like getting the game out in early access first, and that like that hurt reviews a little bit. Like that shows that like because yeah, then like I used to think like wow, like people can just say whatever they want, right, on Steam reviews. Like
Yep.
why? And it's like, well, I mean, yes, they paid for the game, so they definitely can say whatever they want. It was just there are strategies around it, but when you have to deal with like a publisher, or in the case of KSP2, the publisher effectively makes all of those decisions, and you just um, like hold on for the ride. And like that kind of thing can really like hurt a game that's as I think experimental
Yeah,
and reliant on like the goodwill of their players as something like KitHack or KSP. And it's part of how the game came together. It's part of what makes it work is also this very much a double-edged sword, right? Like where it
it
can
is.
backfire on you if you don't treat the community uh, as like they deserve in that sense, because you're releasing this game that's deliberately incomplete, uh, and
Which is a
in
piece that I think a
exchange
lot of
you
people
get like this.
forget. I think a lot of people forget that early access now, because it's become so
Yeah.
commonplace for games to be early access. I think
Well,
people forget this is unfinished.
that's the thing. That's I think part of the like I don't know, this kind of late stage early access world now, where every game now releases in early access just as a, I guess, as a way to put up a shield,
Yeah.
saying like we're not done yet, hang on, to like protect themselves a little bit from like being accused of not being complete. Um, but then, or alternatively, you put the game out in early access. Um, as a way to just release the game without completing it first. I don't know to what degree of like intention that can happen, but we've seen a lot of failure cases,
A
and
lot of cash grabs. People just,
yeah,
yeah.
like a lot of horror stories coming out of early access games to the point where like early access these days is almost like um, a scourge, like a brand of shame that you tack on yourself, saying like, "Oh, this is one of those early access games. They suck." Like,
But as you said,
and
there's so much that's necessary for a lot of games because you want
yeah,
the input of the community. You want to see what
well,
people say.
yeah.
What
I
do they
mean,
like? What do they don't like?
a game
Yeah.
like KSP would not exist without the community because I didn't know what kind of game the players would like to play when
Yeah.
we first released. Like I was making this little game about shooting up rockets and seeing how far you could get before they exploded. Maybe you could get into orbit. Maybe it would have been too complicated. But that was an open question when the game came out, like for the first time. And but it was part of this kind of there's a set of like I guess constraints that need to be there for all that to work. Like the game has to feel like it's coming from this like from a place of just the best of intentions, if not the best of technical capacity.
Yeah.
um, which is like definitely in my case, like there was no competence, but there was a lot of enthusiasm. Um, and the rest of it came later. But like it's very hard to sell the idea of early access from a game that's not like in a situation where it needs to be early access because otherwise there is no game.
Right.
And so then like a lot of that happened and early access is now tainted by all of the failures that happened in it. So I don't know if it can be the same again like that. It also doesn't really help that like the volume of games that you get. Like when
Yes.
we released the game on Steam, KitHack, for the last time last year, I was watching the new released page on Steam and just watching it to see how long the game was actually going to be there. And I think
Interesting.
it lasted about an hour.
Wow.
That's the level of flow that you get these days on Steam. It wasn't like that. Like it used to be that you would put out a game on Steam and it could have very well be one or two games that day that released. Now it's one or two games a minute, if not
Wow.
more. Like it's extremely fast and you get washed over like with this like torrent of content.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's much more difficult.
And there does seem to be
Mm.
kind of an excess of access, as I've said before, in games like
Potentially,
with
yeah.
Roblox and Minecraft, where there's games within the games, and those games
Yeah.
are for free, and there's constantly new stuff, and I do wonder how that's affecting. But it makes me think also think of all the games that maybe started with the best intentions that weren't just an asset flip or a cash grab that
Yeah.
maybe would have fizzled out before a full release that instead got into early access. So at least you got to play it a little bit and try the game before, unfortunately, development fizzled out. And
Yeah.
so I think there is that silver lining to all of it.
Yeah, there is, and I think that that's what early access games. are needed for. Like you need to have a platform where you have uh, this option of like releasing a game in an environment that's hopefully as the least toxic as possible, like as positive as you can foster an
Yeah.
environment for your game so that it has a chance to grow. Because what I've been saying recently is that games don't release anymore. Like that, since it's possible now to patch a game,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a release other than a marketing beat
Yeah.
that is there because they fixed the date. Um, these days, games aren't released. They're born, and they're born naked, covered in slime and screaming.
Yeah.
It's not the best you will ever look. It
Right.
like
I think that's a
maybe
great way to look
you
at it.
want to
Yeah.
like protect it a little bit before you like show it off to the masses.
Yeah. Clean
Like
it up.
clean it up maybe like
Yeah.
before you do the Lion King moment. Like maybe like less slime would
Right.
prove like the general like first impressions. Um, and if you have a game that's like going that has a lot of hype going for it, that's even more true because like a lot of people want to see it's like the baby pharaoh being born. Like everybody
Yeah.
wants to see the baby pharaoh, but like he looks like a little blob of goo right now.
Yeah.
He's gonna grow up to be a wise and a strong leader, but you have to let them get there.
Yeah.
You're saying like he can't even hold up his own head right now. How is that our new king?
Yeah.
That's not the way. Like this that's the problem with early access and hyped launches, I think these days. I've been abusing that metaphor for quite a while now. And it seems to hold because yeah,
Yeah.
it's this kind of paradoxical relationship of like wanting to give people access to like something before it's done, but also like not disappoint. And
Yeah.
if you have like a whole hype train coming behind it, like the disappointment is unavoidable. So you have this kind of like it's a paradox. How do you get the game like to as many people as possible while at the same time getting to them to the least amount of negative players as possible? Um, it it's something that like that's why Steam Early Access isn't working out anymore. It's too big, it's too loud to catch like the right um, category of players that would be like the ideal community your game could have right now.
Yeah.
It's something that like KSP didn't have to deal with that because it started out of Steam. It had its own little community and it would only attract people who just stumbled onto it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
suffering from its own success now. It's too big. Yeah. It's
and now like yeah, with KSP2, like it was an impossible situation. I was gonna say like there was no way
yeah.
you could have released anything short of like absolutely everything that was promised, which is a technical impossibility, I think. Um, not saying like they wouldn't have been able to, it's just like you need infinite manpower and resources to do it.
Yeah.
And even then, there would have been people saying stuff like, "Oh, I imagined it would be different. I'm disappointed. Not
Yeah.
recommended." You
There's
know,
always going to
like
be somebody who doesn't
yeah.
like it, no matter what you put out. Yeah.
And it's just it becomes this very like um non-nurturing environment for a game, especially one that needs the community there to grow. Um, and this is something that I've been seeing like happen more and more.
If you're enjoying this podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And if you want to support me and my channel, you can do so through Patreon or by joining my channel here on YouTube, where you'll get members only exclusives like early access to new episodes, members only videos, and extras. Plus, you'll be helping me focus on getting my next guest and creating new content.